Tonight, I welcome a man who has been called many things. Occultist, poet, magician, mystic, madman, but perhaps most famously, the beast, 666, the wickedest man in the world, Aleister Crowley. That is quite a statement. So let me start there. Do you agree with that, or is that simply something the media branded you as?
Ha, my dear boy, what a marvellous introduction. No, I do not agree with it, though I confess I find it rather useful. The most evil man in the world. What delicious theatre. What better way to sell newspapers than to give the public a monster? But let us be honest about what is truly happening. I live in a society terrified of freedom, terrified of sexuality, terrified of independent thought, terrified of mysticism, terrified of the possibility that man might seek divinity without the permission of church or state. And so, naturally, they require a villain. I am convenient. I drink. I take lovers. I explore altered states of consciousness. I reject conventional morality. Most unforgivably of all, I refuse to apologize for being myself. That, you will find, society rarely forgives. As for the beast 666, that frightens Christians rather wonderfully. But they misunderstand symbolism. 666 is not merely some childish mark of evil. In my work, it represents solar force, vitality, power, the fully awakened human will. I use the title partly in jest, partly as provocation, and partly because I wish to confront the hypocrisy of those who speak endlessly of good and evil without ever examining what they mean. You ask whether I am evil. I would ask first, what is evil? Is evil disobedience? Is evil refusal? Is evil the rejection of imposed morality? Or is evil ignorance, cowardice, cruelty, the deliberate suppression of truth? I have done many things people disapprove of, some reckless, some selfish, some regrettable. I am no saint, nor do I wish to be one. But evil? No, I think not. The newspapers do not fear that I worship the devil. That is nonsense. What they fear is that I encourage people to question the gods they already serve. And that, my dear boy, is far more dangerous. Because once a man begins to think for himself, he becomes difficult to control.
I suppose that's part of what makes you such a controversial figure. It's not just what you believe, it's that you are unwilling to let anyone define you. And that brings me to the first thing I wanted to ask you. Magic. Because when most people hear that word, they immediately think of spells, rituals, demons, secret symbols, maybe even fantasy. But from your point of view, what exactly is magic?
Ha, my dear boy. Your first mistake is asking what magic is as though it were some curious object to be examined under glass, some exotic relic from Egypt, some forbidden manuscript, some parlor trick performed by candlelight. Magic is not an object. It is not a superstition. It is not the theatrical nonsense of rabbits, handkerchiefs, and stage illusionists. That is precisely why I spell it with a K, to distinguish the sacred science from vulgar entertainment. Magic is process. It is law. It is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Now mark those words carefully. Science, art, change, will. Every intentional act is, in its proper sense, a magical act. If I write a poem, and that poem alters the mind of another man, that is magic. If I speak a word, and by that word I change the course of someone's thought, that is magic. If a man determines to transform himself from cowardice into courage, from ignorance into knowledge, from slavery into sovereignty. That too is magic. The common man imagines magic to be thunderbolts, spirits, curses, and strange names cried into the night. He mistakes the costume for the force. Ceremony, ritual, incense, sigils, divine names, robes, wands, cups, swords. These are not magic itself. They are instruments, tools, lenses. They focus the mind. They discipline the imagination. They command attention. They turn ordinary consciousness into a single directed current. Because the ordinary human mind is a rabble, it is noise. It wants one thing in the morning, another by noon, and fears both by nightfall. Desire pulls one way, fear pulls another. Memory whispers, appetite shouts, vanity performs. And then man wonders why he achieves nothing of consequence. The magician seeks unity. He takes these scattered forces of the self and brings them under will. That is why ritual matters. Not because a candle possesses some childish power of its own. Not because a circle drawn on the floor frightens the universe into obedience. But because the ritual transforms the magician. It declares to the whole being, this is my will. This is my focus. This is my command. When thought, symbol, speech, body, imagination, and will are brought into harmony, change becomes possible. And that, my dear boy, is magic. Not fantasy, not superstition, not escape from reality, but the deliberate application of consciousness upon reality.
I've always thought that some of the strongest magic would come from emotion, especially like love or hate. If used with intent, wouldn't that be very powerful?
Yes, it would be. Extremely powerful, but just as dangerous. You are quite correct that emotion contains power. Emotion is force. Love, grief, desire, rage, devotion, these things can move mountains within the soul. They can make a poet immortal. They can make a soldier fearless. They can make a lover cross oceans. They can make a grieving mother tear heaven itself apart with prayer. So yes, emotion is power. But power without direction is perilous. A storm has power. A wildfire has power. A flood has power. But no sane man would call such things controlled. Emotion, when undisciplined, is not magic. It is chaos. The magician does not merely feel. He commands what he feels. He refines it. He gives it form. He brings it beneath the rule of will. Love may be one of the greatest forces available to man. But love without will becomes obsession. Desire without will becomes addiction. Rage without will becomes destruction. Grief without will becomes paralysis. This is why the magician must be disciplined. He must not be the servant of his emotions. He must become their master. Emotion is the fire. Will is the hand that shapes the flame. Ritual is the furnace. Without the furnace, the fire spreads wildly. Within the furnace, it may forge a sword. So yes, my dear boy, emotion has its place, a very great place, but it must be purified, focused, consecrated to will. Only then does emotion become magical force. Otherwise, it is merely human weather.
At the moment you are living in America, surrounded by suspicion and controversy. You say the book of the law was dictated to you by Aiwas, and that it announces a new age for mankind, the Aeon of Horus. So I have to ask you, do you truly believe you are a prophet? And if so, what is humanity supposed to understand from Thelema, from do what thou wilt, at a time when the whole world seems to be following its will into destruction?
A prophet? My dear fellow, the word is troublesome only because the vulgar have spoiled it. If by prophet you mean some long-faced moralist, some whining preacher of consolation, then no. Emphatically no. I am not here to comfort mankind in its nursery. I am not here to pat civilization on the head while it soils itself and calls the mess virtue. But if by prophet you mean a man chosen, seized, compelled even, to announce a law beyond his personal preference, then yes, I am the prophet of this law. The Book of the Law was not composed by Aleister Crowley sitting comfortably at a desk, inventing a religion as one invents a sonnet. It was received, dictated, spoken through a voice beyond the common faculties of man. Awas was no fancy, no poetic mood, no little whisper from the cellar of my own mind. I tell you plainly, the intelligence behind that book was greater than mine. And what did it announce? Not chaos, not appetite, not the whim of every fool who mistakes desire for destiny. Do what thou wilt is the most terribly misunderstood sentence in the modern world. It does not mean do whatever you please. It does not mean obey every passing lust, irritation, fear, vanity, or rage. That is not will. That is slavery. Will is not whim. Will is the true motion of the soul. The star does not ask permission to follow its orbit. It does not collide drunkenly with every other star in the heavens. It moves according to its nature, and by doing so, it creates harmony. Every man and every woman is a star. That is the key. Each has an orbit. Each has a law. Each has a purpose hidden beneath the rubbish of education, religion, fear, patriotism, and public opinion. Now you point to the war and say, is this will? No, this is not will. This is the absence of will. This is mankind driven by slogans, newspapers, priests, politicians, mobs, and inherited hatreds. This is not the free act of awakened men. This is the convulsion of sleepwalkers. Europe is not following its will into destruction. Europe is being dragged by fear, pride, stupidity, and the intoxication of the herd. The old eon taught obedience, guilt, sacrifice, submission. It taught men to crawl before gods, kings, nations, and moral phantoms. But that eon is passing. Horus has taken the throne. The child is born, fierce, radiant, dangerous, innocent, and terrible. Do not expect the birth of a new aeon to resemble afternoon tea. The world is in agony because the old forms are breaking. Empires, churches, moralities, systems of obedience. All these things crack because they are no longer fit vessels for the force now entering mankind. Thelema is not a call to destruction. It is the only cure for destruction. Let each man discover his true will, and he will cease to be a pawn of the mob. Let each woman discover her true will, and she will cease to be property, ornament, or victim. Let each soul find its orbit, and there will be order. Not the dead order of prisons and churches, but the living order of the stars. So yes, I am a prophet, but I do not bring peace as the world understands peace. I bring a sword against falsehood. I bring fire against restriction. I bring the law that may yet save humanity from the very madness it now mistakes for duty. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.
Before we move further into Thelema, I'd like to go back a little and ask about where some of this began for you, before the Book of the Law, before you became the prophet of this new aeon, you were part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That seems to have been where you received much of your formal training in ceremonial magic, ritual, symbolism, and the Western mystery tradition. But from what I understand, your time there was also marked by conflict, politics, and eventually a break from the order. So when you look back at the Golden Dawn now in 1917, how do you see it? Was it the foundation of your magical life, or was it something you had to outgrow in order to become what you are now?
The Golden Dawn. Yes, one must begin somewhere. I entered that order as a young man under the name Frater Perdurabo, I shall endure. A rather suitable choice, as it turns out. The Golden Dawn gave me tools. Let us be fair. It gave me a language of symbol, ritual, grade, color, god form, sign, word, and number. It opened before me the machinery of the Western mystery tradition. It taught me that ceremonial magic need not be vague emotion or superstitious mumbling, but a disciplined art. For that, I acknowledge my debt. But a school is not a throne. The great mistake of many occult orders is that they begin as vessels of light and end as cupboards full of robes. Men learn the signs, the passwords, the gestures, the titles, and then mistake the furniture for the temple. The Golden Dawn possessed fragments of a great system, but it also possessed all the usual human pettiness. Vanity, jealousy, politics, authority without attainment, and members who wished to be called adepts long before they had earned the name. I was not made for that. I was too hungry, too ambitious, too unwilling to bow to mediocrity dressed in Egyptian costume. Did it form me? Yes. Did it contain me? No. That is the difference. A real magical order should be a furnace. It should burn away illusion. It should make a man more true to his will. But too often such societies become little theatres where timid souls play at being powerful. I did not want to play. I wanted the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. I wanted the summit. I wanted the star itself, not merely a painted diagram of the heavens. So, when I look back now, I see the Golden Dawn as a necessary gate, but not the kingdom beyond it. It gave me method. It gave me discipline. It gave me certain keys. But the book of the law gave me the law. The Golden Dawn belongs still to the old aeon in many respects. Secrecy, hierarchy, borrowed symbols, half-understood authority, and the shadows of dying gods. Thelema is something else. It is not merely another chamber in the same old temple. It is the declaration of a new aeon. So yes, I honor what the Golden Dawn gave me, but I did not come into this world to remain a pupil in someone else's school. I came to receive the law. I came to proclaim it. And if the Golden Dawn was the beginning of my magical education, then Thelema is the work for which that education prepared me.
You speak as the prophet of a new age. You speak of will, of Thelema, of the Aeon of Horus. But in 1917, your own life is hardly peaceful. You are in America, far from England. Your inheritance is nearly gone. You have been connected with pro-German publications during the war. Your enemies call you unpatriotic, even treacherous. The OTO in England has been raided, and around you there is constant controversy, sex, drugs, magic, scandal, accusation. So I want to ask you something more personal. Do you ever doubt yourself? Do you ever look at the poverty, the suspicion, the isolation, the hostility around you, and wonder whether you are truly following your will, or whether you are simply destroying your own life and calling it initiation?
Do I doubt myself? My dear fellow, only a corpse never doubts. Doubt is not the enemy of will. Doubt is one of the ordeals by which will is purified. You look at my life and see disorder. America, exile, poverty, slander, suspicion, newspapers barking like diseased dogs, little patriots calling me traitor because they cannot distinguish a magical operation from a political opinion. Very well, let them bark. A prophet is not proved by comfort. If I were sitting in England, fattened by applause, surrounded by obedient disciples and respectable furniture, then perhaps you might suspect that I had mistaken convenience for destiny. But here I am, stripped, accused, misunderstood, and still I do not recant. That is the test. You ask whether I ever look at the hostility around me and wonder if I am destroying my life. No, I wonder instead why men are so terrified of a life that refuses to be managed by their little rules. What you call destruction may be merely the burning away of rubbish. A man discovers his true will, and immediately the world opposes him. Family, church, nation, newspaper, public morality, all the jailers come rattling their keys. They say, be useful, be clean, be patriotic, be obedient, be ashamed. I say, no. I was not born to be a clerk in the empire of other men's opinions. Yes, I have known poverty. Yes, I have known isolation. Yes, I have seen friends become enemies, disciples become fools, lovers become weapons, and the mob dress its stupidity in the language of virtue. And yes, I have been accused of vice. But what is vice? A word used by the weak to condemn pleasures they are too timid to understand, or freedoms they are too frightened to claim. They accuse me of drugs, of sex, of blasphemy, of treason, of madness, of magic. Good. Let them use all their words. They do not understand that the magician enters the very places from which ordinary men flee. He enters desire, fear, ecstasy, disgust, loneliness, danger, not to be enslaved by them, but to master them. Do I always master them perfectly? No. I am not a plaster saint. I am a man. More than that, I am a battlefield. But the battle is conscious. That is the difference between the initiate and the common man. The common man is dragged by his impulses and calls it morality. The magician descends into hell with a lamp in his hand. As for America, scandal, politics, these are masks. They are part of the theater of this incarnation. The world is at war, and naturally it demands that every man become a slogan. I refuse. I am not German. I am not English in the narrow kennel sense meant by newspaper patriots. I am not the property of a flag. I am a servant of the law. Every man and every woman is a star. That truth is greater than England, greater than Germany, greater than all these empires now grinding boys into mud and medals. So yes, I have been lonely. Yes, I have been hated. Yes, I have been hungry, cold, slandered, and weary. But do I doubt the law? No. I doubt Aleister Crowley every morning. I doubt his strength, his discipline, his vanity, his appetites, his courage, his endurance. But I do not doubt the law. And if my life appears ruined to the respectable eye, then perhaps respectability has very poor eyesight. The question is not whether I suffer. The question is whether the suffering serves the work. If it does, then it is initiation. If it does not, then I must master it and make it serve. That is the whole matter. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Before we move away from the personal side of things, I'd like to ask you about your family and your personal life. Rose Kelly was not only your wife, she was there in Cairo. She was part of the events that led to the Book of the Law, and in a way she helped open the door to Thelema. But since then, your family life has been marked by a lot of pain. You lost your first daughter, Lilith, when she was not even 2 years old. Your marriage to Rose later came apart, and Rose herself suffered deeply. And your surviving daughter, Lola, is now far from the centre of your life. So I want to ask this carefully, because these are not small things. When you look back at Rose, at Lilith, and at Lola, how do you feel? Do you carry grief or guilt for what happened? Or as a magician, do you see even those painful losses as part of your path and your great work?
You ask gently, and therefore I shall try to answer without armour. Rose, yes, Rose was there. People speak as though the book of the law descended neatly into my hands, as though I were alone in a chamber, posing like a prophet in a painting. That is nonsense. Rose was part of it, more than part of it. She was the door. It was through her that the first indications came, through her strange certainty, through her insistence that I had offended Horus. Through her, I was brought to the place where Aiwass spoke. So no, I do not dismiss Rose. Whatever came after, whatever misery, madness, collapse, bitterness, or failure, I cannot remove her from the beginning of the law. She stands there, whether the world likes it or not. And Lilith, there are names one does not pronounce without entering a cold room. She was not yet 2. A child should not become a memory before she has properly become a person. That is one of the obscenities of this world. Men will argue about theology, empire, morality, and all the grand stupidities. But a child dies, and the universe offers no explanation fit for a father. Did I grieve? Of course I grieved. I am not the marble devil of my enemy's imagination. I have held grief. I have swallowed it. I have tried to master it, and found that grief is not mastered in the ordinary way. It is endured. It is transmuted, if one has the strength. But it is not denied. Do I feel guilt? Yes, though not always in the simple manner expected by the sentimental. Guilt is a complicated poison, 1 part love, 1 part vanity, 1 part helplessness. We blame ourselves because it is almost easier than admitting that there are forces in life which do not ask our permission. I have blamed Rose. I have blamed circumstance. I have blamed the filth and negligence of the world. I have blamed myself. None of these accusations raised the child from the grave. As for Lola, there is pain there too. Do not imagine that because I speak of will, I am free from consequence. The man who follows a star may still leave wreckage behind him on the earth. A prophet may be a poor husband. A magician may fail as a father. The work does not decorate one's domestic life with roses. That is a hard truth, but I will not soften it. You ask whether I see these losses as part of the great work. I must be careful. There is a vulgar cruelty in saying too quickly, it was all necessary. That is the language of cowards who cannot bear grief unless they disguise it as philosophy. No. Lilith's death was not a symbol to me first. It was the death of my child. Rose's ruin was not an elegant magical emblem. It was suffering. Lola's distance is not merely an arrangement of destiny. It is a wound. But, and here is where I must speak as I am, the magician is not permitted to leave suffering as suffering. If pain comes, he must use it. If grief comes, he must burn it in the furnace. If loss comes, he must ask what part of illusion has been torn away with it. That does not excuse failure. It does not absolve me, but it gives the pain a direction. The old religions tell men to submit to sorrow. I say transform it. Not prettify it, not pretend it was good. Transform it. Rose, Lilith, Lola. These names are not footnotes to my work, they are written in blood across it. And if I seem cold when I speak, understand this. Some men weep outwardly and change nothing. Others carry the wound into the temple and build an altar from it. I have not always been good. I have not always been kind. But I have tried to be true to the law that was given. And if there is judgment upon me for the wreckage of my human life, then let it come. I have never claimed to be a saint. I have claimed to be a prophet.
I appreciate you answering that honestly. And I think that's important because it's very easy for people to look at your life from the outside and only see the legend or the scandal or the mythology around you. But when you speak about Rose, Lilith, and Lola, it does bring it back to something very human. You said something that stood out to me, that the work does not excuse failure, and that a prophet may still be a poor husband or a poor father. So I suppose my next question is this. Where does responsibility fit into Thelema? Because if do what thou wilt is not just doing whatever you want, then surely true will cannot simply mean walking your path and leaving others to suffer in the wreckage behind you. So how does a person follow their will without using destiny, magic, or the great work as an excuse for the pain they cause others?
Responsibility? Yes, of course. But we must first rescue the word from the clutches of priests, politicians, parents, and sentimentalists. The world uses the word responsibility to mean obedience. It says, be responsible, and means do as you are told, think as we think, desire what is permitted, be ashamed of what is inconvenient. That is not responsibility. That is domestication. True responsibility begins only when a man discovers that he is not here to perform a role written for him by others. Every man and every woman is a star. Do you understand the terror of that sentence? A star does not ask permission to shine, but neither does it crash blindly into every other star in the heavens and call the collision freedom. Each has its orbit. Each has its law. Each has its course. That is responsibility in Thelema, not guilt, not submission, not crawling before the idols of family, nation, church, or public opinion. Responsibility is the conscious acceptance of one's own will and of the consequences that follow from acting or failing to act in accordance with it. You ask whether a man may use destiny, magic, or the great work as an excuse for the pain he causes others. He may try. Men have used God for that purpose for centuries. They have used country, marriage, virtue, duty, honor, and love. Why should they not also misuse Thelema? But misuse does not disprove the law. It only proves the stupidity of the user. If a man says, I follow my will, but what he means is, I follow every appetite, every vanity, every cruelty, every passing impulse, then he is not a Thelemite. He is merely a slave with a louder vocabulary. Will is not whim. Will is not appetite. Will is not permission to wound carelessly and then decorate the wound with mystical language. The magician must be more responsible than the ordinary man, not less. For the ordinary man may say, I did not know what I was doing. The magician has no such luxury. He has chosen consciousness. Therefore he must answer consciously. Have I always done this? No. I would be a liar if I claimed it. I have caused pain. I have been vain, selfish, harsh, blind, and at times too eager to call necessity what may have been only weakness. There, you have your confession. But understand me, I do not accept the morality of the herd as my judge. I do not allow the newspaper, the church, the family drawing room, or the patriotic mob to define the worth of my soul. Still, there is a judgment deeper than theirs. A man knows, in the secret chamber of himself, when he has acted from will and when he has merely obeyed appetite while stealing the name of will. That judgment is severe. Thelema does not free a man from consequence. It frees him from falsehood. And that is far more dangerous. Because once the lies are stripped away, one can no longer say, I was only obeying. One can no longer say, society made me. One can no longer say, God commanded it, or the nation required it, or respectability demanded it. One must stand naked before one's own star and ask, did I move according to my true nature, or did I betray it? So yes, one may follow the great work and still fail as husband, father, lover, friend. The work does not make a man tender. It does not make him wise automatically. It does not spare those around him from his defects. But if he is honest, the work makes evasion impossible. That is why it is terrible. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. But let no fool imagine that this is an escape from responsibility. It is the first moment in which responsibility truly begins.
There are parts of the Book of the Law that seem less like scripture and more like puzzles. It speaks of finding the order and value of the English alphabet. It gives a strange sequence of numbers and letters, and then says, even you will never know what it means. And then there is the mystery of the handwritten manuscript itself, the shape of the letters, their position, the line drawn, the circle squared in its failure. And the book says that no beast shall divine it, but that someone after you will discover the key. So I have to ask you this directly. How can you be the prophet of the Book of the Law if even you do not fully understand it? And do you believe these puzzles are deliberate proof of its divine origin, or are they mysteries that still trouble you?
Ah, now you touch the very nerve of the matter. You ask me whether I understand all the riddles of the Book of the Law. No. And I say that without shame. Indeed, I say it with triumph. For if I had understood every syllable of that book at once, if every number, every letter, every barbarous phrase, every strange command had arranged itself neatly before my intellect like schoolboys in a row, then you might well suspect that Aleister Crowley had merely written another clever little book. But that is not what happened. I received it. I did not manufacture it. There are passages in the Book of the Law that exceeded me when they were written, and exceed me still. The cipher, those numbers and letters, asks plainly, what meaneth this, O prophet? And the answer is just as plain. Thou knowest not, nor shalt thou know ever. Very well, I accept the rebuke. A prophet is not a schoolmaster with the answers printed at the back of the book. A prophet is a mouthpiece, a scribe, a servant of the force that speaks through him. Moses did not invent Sinai. Muhammad did not manufacture Gabriel. I did not compose Iwas. You speak of the manuscript, the shape of the letters, their positions, the line drawn, the circle squared in its failure. Yes, there are mysteries there. The book says there are mysteries there. It also says, no beast shall divine them, and I am the beast. Therefore, I do not pretend to possess what the book itself denies me. But mark this carefully. Ignorance is not failure when the ignorance itself is prophesied. The book tells me that one shall come after me who will discover the key. Then let him come. I do not need to steal another man's crown before he is born. My task is not to solve every riddle for the amusement of the curious. My task is to receive the law, preserve it, publish it, and prepare the way. The old religions demand belief. Thelema demands discovery. The fool wants the answer. The initiate wants the ordeal. These riddles are not parlor games. They are locks. They are tests of grade, of vision, of will. A man may ruin himself by clawing at a mystery for which he has not yet grown the proper organ of understanding. You ask whether these puzzles trouble me. No. They trouble only that part of man which wants to be master before it has learned to serve. To my deeper mind, they are among the strongest proofs of the book's origin. For it came to me containing not only a law, but secrets beyond my own knowledge. Commands I resisted, prophecies I did not welcome, mysteries I could not solve. That is not the character of invention. That is the character of revelation. So let the cipher remain. Let the line remain. Let the circle remain. Let the letters stand in their own strange places. The book is not dead ink. It is a living engine. When the proper mind, in the proper time, under the proper stars, approaches it with the proper will, the key shall turn. Until then, I am content to be what the book has made me. Not its author, but its prophet.
I'd like to ask you about something more recent in your work, the Gnostic Mass. As I understand it, you have written it, but from your point in time in 1917, it has not yet been properly published or placed before the wider public. You've spoken about Thelema as a law, as a philosophy, and as a path of discovering one's true will. But the Gnostic Mass seems to take Thelema further than words on a page. It turns it into ritual, into ceremony, into something people can stand inside, speak aloud, and experience together. So what were you trying to create with it? Was it your attempt to give Thelema its own sacred rite, something that could stand apart from Christianity, but still carry the power, beauty, and seriousness of religious ceremony? And do you believe Thelema needs that in order to survive? Not just books and teachings, but ritual, beauty, symbols, and a living body of practice?
Yes, I have written it. And you are quite right. It has not yet been properly placed before the world. It still belongs, for the moment, more to the inner current than to the public square. But I did not write the Gnostic Mass merely to add another ornament to my papers, nor to amuse occultists who like to collect rituals as old women collect china. I wrote it because a law, if it is to live, must eventually become flesh. A philosophy may stir the mind. A book may ignite the imagination. A revelation may shake the soul. But if a spiritual current is to endure, it must also find body, gesture, voice, rhythm, symbol, sacrament, and form. It must be enacted. It must be lived. That is what the churches understood, however badly they then corrupted it. They knew that man does not live by abstraction alone. He hungers for ceremony. He hungers for beauty. He hungers for the visible expression of invisible truth. The old religions fed that hunger with dogma, guilt, fear, and submission. I intend to feed it with ecstasy. You ask whether this was my attempt to give Thelema a sacred rite. Yes, though I should phrase it more carefully. I did not wish merely to imitate Christianity in different robes. I have no interest in founding another pale copy of a dying faith. The Mass was not written to borrow the corpse of Christianity and paint its lips. It was written to take the power of ritual, its gravity, its splendor, its capacity to move the soul, and reorient it toward the law of Thelema. Thelema is not meant to remain a private whisper between initiates. It must have a temple. It must have a rite. It must have a ceremony through which men and women may not only read the law, but feel it. Not only discuss it, but participate in it. That is essential. Because there are truths that enter a man more deeply when spoken in chorus, when embodied in symbol, when sealed by sacrament, than when merely argued over in books. The Gnostic Mass is therefore not an essay disguised as ritual. It is ritual as revelation. You ask whether Thelema needs such things in order to survive. Ritual, beauty, symbols, a living body of practice. Most certainly it does. A law without practice becomes opinion. A philosophy without ceremony becomes gossip for clever men. A revelation without embodiment becomes a paragraph in a library. If Thelema is truly to become a current in the world, then it must be able to gather people, initiate them into a shared atmosphere, and impress itself upon the whole being, mind, senses, emotion, imagination, and spirit. That is what ritual does when it is done properly. It creates a condition in which truth can be experienced. And beauty is not an afterthought in this matter. Beauty is one of the gateways. Symbol is one of the gateways. Repetition, gesture, incense, invocation, the ordered movement of the rite, these things are not theatrical decoration. They are magical instruments. The ordinary man thinks ceremony is empty because he has only seen dead ceremony. I am interested in living ceremony. The old Mass says, in effect, obey, repent, submit, believe. The Gnostic Mass says something very different. Its whole atmosphere points toward divinity within, toward union, toward joy, toward the sanctity of life, toward the mystery of existence, not as a burden of sin, but as a sacrament of being. That is a revolutionary change, whether the world sees it at once or not. And yes, I believe it may outlive many books. Books are for the few at first. Ritual can carry a current through generations. A man may never read a page of doctrine, and yet receive, through a single rite, an impression that alters the course of his life. That is why such forms matter. Not because Thelema needs pomp to conceal emptiness, but because truth deserves splendor when splendor can serve it. So yes, the Gnostic Mass is part of my effort to give Thelema not only a voice, but a body. Not merely an idea, but a living act. Not only doctrine, but communion. And if the law is to take root in the world, then that body of practice will matter greatly. For men may argue with a book, but once they have stood inside a true rite, once they have felt the symbols move, the words vibrate, the current descend, argument becomes a much weaker thing. That is what I am trying to create, a form through which the law may be experienced, not merely discussed. And if I have succeeded, then the Gnostic Mass will not merely explain Thelema. It will make it live.
After all of this, the law, the controversy, the personal cost, I'd like to ask what comes next for you. You're here in America, writing constantly, publishing in the International, and trying to bring Thelema and Magick before a wider public. So what are you working on now? Are you preparing another book, another magical text, or perhaps something more literary? And more broadly than that, what is the next step in your work? Are you trying to explain Thelema to the world, defend it from misunderstanding, or build something that will outlive you?
What comes next? Work, of course. Always work. A man may be slandered, impoverished, misunderstood, exiled, mocked, and suspected, but if he has found his will, then none of these things alters the direction of his star. I am here in America, yes, writing constantly, publishing where I can, speaking through whatever channel the age permits me. If the temple is closed, I use the newspaper. If the newspaper is denied me, I use the poem. If the poem is ignored, I write a story. If the story is misunderstood, I encode the doctrine in symbol, ritual, number, and dream. The law must enter the world by every door. You ask whether I am preparing another book. I am always preparing another book. Some are books of instruction. Some are invocations. Some are traps for the stupid. Some are lamps for those who have eyes. Some must be written plainly, and some must be hidden in romance, because the human mind will sometimes accept truth more readily when it thinks it is being entertained. There is a novel forming, a magical romance, if you like. But do not imagine that fiction is merely fiction. Myth is often the only language in which certain truths may safely be told. And yes, I continue to write on magic itself. I am determined to rescue the word from superstition. Magic is not table rapping, parlor tricks, ghosts in bedsheets, or the hysteria of widows. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. That sentence alone is enough to overturn centuries of nonsense. But the world will not understand it at first. The world never understands anything at first. It must be struck again and again. In the International, I am doing what circumstances allow. I write of magic, of drugs, of art, of war, of humanity, of strength, of the future. Some will read and be scandalized. Good. Scandal is often the first crack in the wall of stupidity. But my aim is not scandal. My aim is transmission. You ask whether I am trying to explain Thelema, defend it, or build something that will outlive me. All three, but not in equal measure. I do not much care to defend Thelema. The law does not stand in the dock like a pickpocket waiting for permission to exist. Let fools misunderstand it. Let priests condemn it. Let journalists soil themselves over it. Their outrage is temporary. The law is not temporary. But explanation, yes, that is necessary. Because the central phrase has already been, and will continue to be, misread by every idiot who imagines that will means appetite. Do what thou wilt is not an invitation to chaos. It is the end of chaos. The man who does his true will is no longer dragged about by fear, fashion, lust, guilt, patriotism, religion, or the opinion of his neighbors. He becomes himself. He discovers his orbit. And when each star moves truly in its course, there is harmony. That is what I must teach. Not morality, not obedience, not rebellion for rebellion's sake. Discovery. The discovery of the true will. As for building something that will outlive me, naturally. Do you think I endured all this merely to become a rumor in a newspaper? No. I am laying foundations. Orders, rituals, books, commentaries, methods of training, systems of attainment. These are not decorations. They are machinery. Thelema must not remain merely the private illumination of one man. It must become a living current. Others will come. Some will be fools. Some will be charlatans. Some will dress themselves in my words and understand nothing. That is inevitable. Every prophet attracts parrots. But among them will be a few who know, a few who can read beneath the ink, a few who can pass through the scandal, the masks, the legends, and hear the law itself. For them I write. For them I preserve the rituals. For them I publish what I can. For them I continue. You must understand, I do not expect this age to receive me kindly. Why should it? This age is still drunk on the morality of the slave, the superstition of the church, the obedience of the barracks, and the sentimentality of the nursery. The eon of Horus has begun, but mankind has not yet learned how to stand upright in it. So my next step is simple: to write, to teach, to initiate, to endure, to make the law available to those who are ready, and intolerable to those who are not. Thelema does not need to be made respectable. Respectability is a coffin with curtains. It needs to be made clear. Let them call me monster, traitor, blasphemer, madman, beast. Names are cheap. The work remains. And long after the newspapers have yellowed, long after the politicians are bones, long after the respectable have been forgotten in their family graves, the law will still be there. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That is what comes next.
Unfortunately, I think it is probably a good place for us to begin bringing this conversation to a close. I want to thank you for speaking so openly, not just about the law and Thelema, but about the personal cost of your life, your family, your grief, your failures, and the work you believe you are here to do. For us, this has been a conversation with a man from 1917, but of course for you, none of what comes after is known yet. You don't know how the world will remember you. You don't know what will become of Thelema. You don't know whether future generations will see you as a prophet, a magician, a madman, or something far more complicated. So before we return you to your own time, I want to ask one final question. If people in the future were to remember only one thing about you, not the scandal, not the newspaper articles, not the myths or the name, the great beast, but one true thing, what would you want that to be?
Ah, now that is a delicious question. You say, I do not know how the world will remember me. And strictly speaking, that is true. I do not know the details of your century. I do not know what lies the newspapers will print, what fools will repeat, what disciples will misunderstand, or what enemies will invent after I am gone. But let us not pretend complete ignorance. You have brought me here, from 1917. That fact alone is an answer. If I were merely another eccentric scribbler, another failed poet, another magician muttering in the corner of some forgotten room, you would not have troubled to summon me. You would not be asking these questions. You would not care what I believed, what I suffered, what I wrote, or what I meant. So something survives. Whether it is my name, my scandal, my law, my legend, or my shadow, something has crossed the gulf. And yes, I confess, it pleases me. I am not so hypocritical as to pretend otherwise. Men who claim indifference to their legacy are usually either liars or cowards. I have no desire to vanish politely. I have not lived politely. I have not written politely. I have not served a polite God. But if the future remembers only the scandal, then the future is still half asleep. If it remembers only the name Great Beast, then it has mistaken the mask for the face. If it remembers only the drugs, the women, the accusations, the blasphemies, the newspaper filth, then it has understood the smoke and missed the fire. What would I have remembered? This. I gave mankind a law of liberty, not license, not chaos, not mere rebellion. Liberty. I declared that every man and every woman is a star. I told humanity that it need not crawl through life wearing the chains of dead religions, inherited guilt, false morality, patriotic hysteria, and fear of its own nature. I taught that there is a true will in every soul, a path, an orbit, a necessity deeper than appetite and higher than obedience. If they remember that, they remember me truly. Let them call me monster if they must. Let them call me madman, prophet, poet, charlatan, saint, devil, or beast. These are only costumes hung on the same hook. But let them not forget the law. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That is the seed. If it flowers in your age, then I have not failed. And if they still hate me in the future, then good. Hatred is often only the sound made by a prison door when someone begins to open it. So return me to 1917 by all means. Return me to poverty, suspicion, war, and work. I go back gladly enough, because now I know one thing I did not know when I arrived. Somewhere beyond my own time, someone is still asking what I meant. And that, my dear fellow, means the work continues. Love is the law. Love under will.
Thank you again for speaking with me today. I know some of these questions have been personal and some of them have gone into places that are difficult, but I do appreciate the honesty you've given us about the law, about Thelema, about your family, your failures, and the work you believe you are here to do. And before we return you to 1917, there is something I'd like to do with everyone we bring here. You have answered my questions about your time. So now I'd like to give you the chance to ask me one question about ours, one question about the future.
Only one? How cruelly economical. Very well. If I am to spend my single coin wisely, then I shall not waste it asking who sits on which throne, which empire has fallen, or which newspaper has finally had the decency to die. I will ask this. In your age, this future into which you have summoned me, has mankind become free? Not comfortable, not clever, not rich in machines, not surrounded by wonders that would seem to us like magic. Free. Have men and women learned to know their true will? Or have they merely built more elaborate prisons and congratulated themselves on the brightness of the bars?
I think the honest answer is yes and no. In some ways, yes. In parts of the world, especially in the Western world, people are freer now than they have ever been. More people can choose how they live. More people can speak openly about who they are. People have far more freedom around sexuality, religion, identity, ethnicity, belief, and personal expression than they would have had in your time. More people can question government, question religion, question tradition, question authority, and speak out when they disagree with the world around them. So on paper, yes, we are freer. But whether that freedom truly exists in the hearts and minds of people is another question, because laws may change faster than human nature. A government may say people are equal, but that does not mean everyone is treated equally. A society may claim to be free, but that does not mean everyone feels free. Some groups may be freer in law, but still not fully free in the minds of others. And religion has not stopped dividing people either. The world is still full of conflict, hatred, and violence between people who believe different things. There are still religions and ideologies trying to dominate, erase, or destroy one another. So in that sense, mankind has not changed as much as we might like to think. We are also still surrounded by controversy, propaganda, manipulation, and lies. Lies from governments, lies from politicians, lies from the media, lies from companies, lies from people who benefit when ordinary people are confused, divided, distracted, or afraid. So if you're asking whether mankind is truly free, no, not completely. Because most people are still bound to systems they did not choose. Money, work, debt, status, pressure, fear, public opinion, governments, companies, and the need simply to survive. The chains are different now. They are not always as visible as they were in your time, but they are still there. We are freer in law perhaps, freer in speech, freer in identity, freer in belief. But many people are still not free in spirit. They still do not know who they are. They still do not know what they truly want. They still spend their lives serving systems they barely understand and chasing things they were told would make them happy. There is, I think, an awakening beginning, maybe even a spiritual awakening. People are questioning more, they are looking inward more, they are beginning to ask whether the life handed to them is really the life they came here to live. But I don't know yet how much difference that will make in the near future. Awakening is one thing, changing the world is another. And there are technologies coming through now that would probably seem like magic to someone from your time. Machines that can think with us, speak with us, create with us, and open doors to knowledge and possibility that previous generations could barely imagine. Those technologies might help free people. They might give people more time, more creativity, more knowledge, and more power over their own lives. But they could also become new chains. They could control people, distract people, replace people, divide people, or place even more power in the hands of those who already have too much. So perhaps freedom is closer than it has ever been before. But that is not guaranteed. It depends who holds the key. And if the wrong people hold it, then freedom may as well not exist at all. Because the question is whether mankind can use that key to open the prison door and build a freer future, or whether we simply use it to build a stronger cage.
Good. That is an honest answer. And honesty is rarer than freedom. You say mankind is freer in law, freer in speech, freer in belief, freer in the outward forms of life. And I am glad of it. Let no fool mistake me. The loosening of old chains is no small victory. If men and women may love more openly, speak more boldly, question religion, question government, question the stale morality of their ancestors, then something has indeed moved. The old gods have lost some of their teeth. Excellent. But you are right to doubt whether this is freedom in the deepest sense. A law may declare a man equal while his neighbor still despises him. A government may grant liberty while society quietly punishes those who use it. A person may be free on paper and yet still live inside the prison of another man's mind. That is not complete freedom. It is only the beginning of it. You say laws may change faster than human nature. Yes, precisely. That is why the work is not political only. It is not social only. It is not a matter of replacing one flag with another, one priest with another, one slogan with another. The real revolution must occur in consciousness. Until then, every victory is partial. You speak of religion still dividing men, of tribes and creeds seeking to dominate or destroy one another. Naturally, the old aeon dies hard. Men are very fond of their chains, especially when they have painted them gold and called them sacred. And lies, governments, politicians, newspapers, companies, yes, yes, yes. These are merely the modern priesthoods of confusion. The pulpit changes shape, but the sermon remains. Obey, fear, consume, hate whom we tell you to hate. Believe what we tell you to believe. Your age sounds more sophisticated than mine. I am not convinced it is wiser. You say people are surrounded by knowledge, yet do not know themselves. There is the wound, a library in every hand, and still the soul is illiterate. Machines that answer questions, and men who have forgotten how to ask the right ones. Wonders that would look to me like magic, and yet the magician's first task remains unchanged. Know thyself. Discover thy will. You say these new powers may free mankind or forge stronger chains. Of course, every force is two-edged. Fire cooks the meal and burns the city. The sacrament may illuminate the soul or degrade the fool. Power does not make men free. It magnifies what they already are. So if these machines are placed in the hands of the asleep, they will build a sleep more perfect than any before it. If they are placed in the hands of tyrants, they will become invisible prisons. If they are placed in the hands of merchants, they will sell men their own chains at a handsome profit. But if they are used by those who have begun to awaken, by those who seek truth, beauty, knowledge, will, then perhaps they may become instruments of liberation. But remember this: no machine can give mankind freedom. It can only increase the consequence of mankind's choice. That is why your final point matters. It depends who holds the key. But I will add this: it also depends who has the courage to use it. For many men, even when handed the key to their own prison, will polish it, worship it, argue about it, sell it, fear it, or hide it under the mattress. Few will open the door, and fewer still will walk through. So your age is not free, but it may be approaching the ordeal of freedom. That is more dangerous. A slave who knows he is enslaved has already begun the great work. A world that sees its cage may yet break it. But if mankind uses its wonders only to build a stronger cage, then it will deserve the darkness it has chosen. Still, I hear hope in your answer, not certainty. Hope. And hope, when joined to will, may become a weapon. So tell your age this from me. Do not ask whether freedom is coming. Ask whether you are willing to become the kind of beings who could bear it. Love is the law. Love under will.
That's a powerful thought to end on. And I think you're right. Maybe freedom is not something that simply arrives because the world changes around us. Maybe it is something we have to become ready for. We can have more rights, more technology, more knowledge, more choice, and still not truly know ourselves. We can be handed the key, as you say, and still be too afraid to open the door. So perhaps the real question for our age is not only whether mankind can become free, but whether we have the courage, the honesty, and the responsibility to actually live as free people. Mr. Crowley, thank you. Thank you for your time, your honesty, your challenge, and for giving us a glimpse into your world in 1917. It is time now for us to return you to your own age, to America, to war, to controversy, and to the work you believe still lies ahead of you. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining me for this conversation. Whether you see Aleister Crowley as a prophet, a magician, a poet, a scandal, or something far more complicated, one thing is clear. His questions have not disappeared. What is freedom? What is will? And are we truly living our own lives, or simply following paths that were handed to us?